Hi there, it's Dr. Saira, and I am back for Ask Dr. Saira, our video series where you get to send me your questions and I will answer them. So we've had some great questions this month and we're continuing on with the momentum. This question came to me from Nisha, and here's the question. She says, I've noticed that I have a habit of magnifying or minimizing things. So when I evaluate myself or a situation, I unreasonably magnify the negatives and or minimize the positives. When I magnify the negatives, I often end up in a victim story. Sometimes in situations when I do great things, I tell myself it's not a big deal because everyone can do it when that's not necessarily true. Are you able to shed some light from a psychology point of view of why this happens, please? Any tips on how to transform this pattern is greatly appreciated. Thanks, Dr. Saira. Okay, Nisha, that is a really good question. It actually links back to a question that we had earlier, one of the months before, around positivity, optimism versus negativity and pessimism. And what it sounds like to me is that when good things happen, you kind of minimize it. And when bad things happen, it becomes a really, really big deal. And so your tendency is to focus on the negative. And it sounds like you're trying to change that, but you're not quite sure how to do that. And you want to understand why this happens. And I'm assuming you want to understand why this happens so that you can change it. So let's talk first about why this happens. Okay. When we're little, it all goes back to when we're little. There's a certain parenting style that we grow up in, right? And so there's three kind of different family systems that we grow up in. Either a backbone family, a jellyfish family, or a brick wall family. These are according to Barbara Coloroso, who's like a mastermind around child psychology. And she talks about the brick wall family being the family that's like, look, there's one way of doing things and that's our way. And when you don't do it our way, you're out. Like you're unacceptable. The jellyfish family is where there's a lot of like anything goes, do whatever you want. And children in that family feel very insecure because there's no structure. And then the backbone family is what we're all striving for, which is where there's flexibility and movement, but there's still structure. If you're the kind of person who's focusing a lot on the negative, I would assume, and I could be wrong, but I would assume you maybe came from a brick wall family. And what that means is that there was very clear delineation in your family about what was right and what was wrong. And as a child, you were probably told you were wrong a lot, because that's what brick wall families do, is that they have a very clear distinction on right and wrong. And so if you were told you were wrong a lot, what happens is that starts becoming your worldview, where you start seeing the world as like, I don't know if I can really trust that. I don't know if people are necessarily, you start seeing the wrong in things rather than the right in things. It's just the way, you've learned to be in your family system. That's kind of where it comes from. And I'm making some assumptions here. I don't know you, Nisha, so I'm not sure, but this is what I would assume just from what you've told me. So if you came from a brick wall family where, the rules were pretty clear and you kind of had to do things a certain way, and you were the person who either you didn't do them that way, or you bought into it, but you started like internalizing that thing about, there's only one right way of doing things, then you'll start to feel when you look outside in the world that the negative is more true than the positive. Okay? And that's why you tend to magnify things that are bad and minimize things that are good, because if they're good, it's like, yeah, no big deal. What's the big deal? If they're bad, it's like, oh, now we need to have a conversation because something wrong happened here. See, in backbone families, people are more balanced. They're actually able to really celebrate good things and they're able to cope when things go wrong. But in brick wall families, it's like, yeah, we're just not very good at the darker, downer sides of life. Like that just like overwhelms us, or it becomes our main lens through which we see things. So how do you change it? So first of all, it's acknowledging that, okay, maybe this comes from the way that I was raised. And again, our parents did the best they could with what they had. It's not about blaming parents at all, but it's about understanding where you're coming from. So if I'm coming from this place where I tend to see the bad, I tend to see what's negative, I tend to magnify that, how do I turn that around? One of the ways to turn it around is to surround yourself with people who are more optimistic. And that might be difficult to do. I don't know if you watch that show Grey's Anatomy. I'm like hooked on Grey's Anatomy right now. But there's a couple of characters in Grey's Anatomy that are really like negative and dark and pessimistic, and they're kind of the main characters of the show. Then there's these optimistic people, and these negative people kind of poke fun at the optimistic people, like, oh, they don't know, they're delusional, they have no idea about the reality of the world. And that's often what pessimistic people do, is that they kind of like laugh at those optimistic people. But what I would suggest to you is to start that's my alarm. It means I'm talking too long and too much. So I'm going to cut it short, but get to the point, which is surround yourself with more optimists. Surround yourself with people who start to see the world as glass half full. And let them rub off on you and see if you can stop judging them and stop being like, well, they don't know what they're talking about, right? Just actually let them in. Let that rub off on you a little bit. And as you do that, you'll start softening and you'll start adopting that viewpoint that, you know what, maybe I can celebrate when things go well. And maybe when things are really bad, maybe it's okay to just not make such a big deal about it. Maybe I can let things slide off a little easier. So that's what I would suggest to you, Anisha, as far as how to manage that and your explanation of where it comes from a psychology point of view. I hope that was helpful. For the viewers, for whoever's watching me right now, if you have some additional thoughts that you want to add or a follow-up question from this video, leave a comment down below. And if you have a question that you want me to answer in one of these future segments, please send me an email to connect@talktosira.com, and I will answer your question in one of our upcoming segments. End of the day, it's your life, and only you can live it. Take care and have a good one.